Welcome back once again to the realm of Final Fantasy XIV. So far, we've covered 2 of the 3 new dungeons added in the most recent patch, so let's talk about dungeon number 3, the Temple of Qarn, Hard Mode. Hard Mode of the Temple of Qarn is exactly the same as the other 2 dungeons, in that they are both 4-man dungeons with the same average item level requirement and rewards. The only difference is what is included within, so without further ado, let's skip ahead to when I actually get that group. The queues for this are a little bit long. We're still recovering from the rogue ninja invasion at the time of this recording, but we're doing a lot better now. Also of note, this was recorded a fair amount of time ago, a good couple weeks ago at this point, before a lot of the newly released gear had gotten into circulation. In turn, the people showcased in this video will generally be not as geared as many of the people that you will see in the future. This actually comes into play in a little bit. Hard mode of the Temple of Qarn opens up the exact same way that the normal mode of Temple of Qarn opens up. You're at the base of a staircase and you move up top. Up top there are a number of enemies, specifically the Beladian Knights, of which there are 3. The Beladian Knights don't, to my knowledge, do anything of terrible worth, so fight them as usual. Now, one thing the tank is doing here is something that you'll see a lot of tanks do nowadays, but especially at the time of this recording, this was a very dumb thing to do, which the gear was simply not available for people to do pulls this big reliably. More often than not, I'd see people go, hey, we can do big pulls, and then immediately wipe. Thankfully, people have gotten better, there's a little better gear out there, and we can actually handle these bigger pulls now. At the time of this recording, no. That said, there's a number of enemies here. There's the Beladian Knights, there's the Death Sickles, and there is the cracked Qarn face. There's also, Beladian souls about. For the most part, these all act like enemies that you've seen before. The souls, of course, have the AoE around them that can draw in and absorb energy. A number of them have conal AoEs. Of note, you do have to kill the Qarn face because it drops the Sun Sphere, which you need in order to progress. Moving around the corner, just here at the bottom of the stairs, you see a couple more of the Death Sickles and a Temple Fox, which is just a bat. Now, all of these enemies we've seen before, mantises and bats, so I'm going to forego an elaborate description and instead say you should really know how to fight them at this point. However, in the next room, now in this room you had to use the Sun Sphere in order to unlock this room. And as you can see, things are going poorly. Please, stop being so eager. That is a very difficult room to pull, to do a pull that huge. And, as I mentioned, we're getting a little eager. At the time of this recording, don't do it. If you're geared and set up and experienced now, you can probably handle it. But that room specifically is a rough room. So let's go back to the Death Sickles and the Temple Fox. Or, they're Death Sickle and Temple Foxes. As I mentioned, it's just a mantis and a couple bat-type enemies. Nothing you haven't seen before, so take them down as one would expect. The big trouble comes in the next room, because in the next room there are a number of I think 2 death sickles, as well as the, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that name, Camptosaur. I don't know. Now these guys, especially the dinosaur, hits like a truck. These guys hit hard, and they've got a fair amount of HP. You can also see spikes jutting up out of the ground, and if you stand on them, it will hurt plenty. I tried to figure out exactly how much it would hurt, but I had stone skin on me at the time, so I don't actually know. It did not wear through my entire stone skin in one go. If I had to take a wager, it'd probably be about 500 damage. However, what you want to do is grab the enemies and tank them over top of the spikes, because those spikes will hurt them just the same. Now once they're done and cleared out, you can run over here where you'll find a big hole. No choice but to jump down, and it's going to hurt. So take a moment to recover, and you will find yourself face to face with the first boss. A pile of rubble. Okay, so it's not actually a pile of rubble. As soon as everybody is healed up, shame he was so eager before, now he's taking forever. Now you see immediately 3 targets other than the boss, and there was a big red light on the tail. You have to watch for where that light appears, and that is the extremity that you have to attack. And that's mostly it for this phase. You attack that one. Once it's defeated, the boss itself will crumple into a pile, and a number of spiders will appear. DPS these down, and the boss will get back up. Now, aside from that, there's 2 major attacks that you need to worry about. One is the large orb you see off in the corner. You'll occasionally see a arrow point down over top of someone's head. That person needs to immediately get as far away from everybody else as possible, because in very short time, that orb is going to spawn where they were. The orb will pound the ground and continuously do damage to anything caught in its range. The light, by the way, will not always show up on the tail, so you have to keep an eye out. Here, we've got somebody numbering whatever it shows up on, so we always have a pretty good idea. Now, the other attack to pay attention to in this fight is the giant vortex of sand, so to say. I wanted to think of a better word for it, but I couldn't. I'm sorry. This thing will appear, and it is rather large. It slows you down while you're inside, and you have to get out of it before the little timer runs out. You've got somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 seconds to get out. As long as you don't get cornered, or as long as you just book straight to the edge, you should be fine. However, if you are still within one of those whirlpools when that timer hits 0, you die. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. You keel over. So be sure to get out of the way. Now this will repeat a number of times, as you've seen here, but after the final time, I think the 3rd time you defeat the crawlers, when the boss gets back up, he's looking a little worse for wear. Not much left to him at this point, so just whittle down what little is left. You did just see, though, and this is something the boss has been doing the whole fight throughout, is the boss does have a front conal AoE, that pound attack. That's a tank-only hit attack. If you get hit by it as a DPS, it will hurt. But regardless, at this point, it doesn't have much HP, so whittle down what's left of it, and you win the day. Beating this grants you 1 treasure coffer, which will have within a piece of item level 90 equipment. Well, technically, no. Within will be an item that you can turn in to get a piece of item level 90 equipment, as well as potentially, or potentially, a piece of crafting gear that you can sell or use to craft. Your call. Another couple of enemies here. Now, I don't know why, but I usually see people number the Vipers to kill first, but I have been told by a healer that you actually want to kill the Mites first, as they have a poison that they will put on the tank. Healer says that that poison debuff will stack up on itself and start to hurt pretty quick. So you will want to kill the mites first. I don't actually know, but I'm going to trust the healer's word on this one and suggest you kill the mites first, despite that I usually see people number the vipers first. Just a couple of them and you come across a mini-boss, I guess you could say. There's the head itself and a hand. You'll notice the hand grabs somebody and holds them in place, while the head then aims a laser at them. You have to kill that hand before the laser goes off, so the person that the hand grabbed can get out of the way. But that's about it, really. When the hand shows up, it'll grab somebody and hold them in place. You kill the hand, free them, they get out of the way of the laser, and then you just beat on the head. The head doesn't do too much, from what I've seen, other than a conal AoE or so. So it's generally not that super complicated to take down. However, partway through the fight, another hand will spawn. Now, who the hand grabs, I believe, is the person who has the most hate on the head. I don't know that for certain, but I believe that's the case, as it seems to predominantly grab the tank. There is something later on that will then lead me to believe that it's actually the person with the most hate, but we'll get to that when we get to that. Once you've defeated him, the door opens, and you're once again face-to-face with a couple of enemies. Just another viper and a couple of mites. The tank is going to go ahead and keep on running, grab a couple more of them around the corner, because there's a couple more vipers, a couple more mites around the corner, and we'll just take them all out at once. As well as another face. Now this face, you do need to take out, just like any other, it has a conal AoE, nothing fancy. But you need to take out that face specifically, because it drops the item that you use to open the next door. Need I remind you that at the time of recording this, doing pulls that big was really dumb. You'll notice that the tank and summoner both died in that fight. Now if you peer around the corner, you'll see a treasure chest. We actually passed it on the way to the pull, but if we then continue on, the door will be just ahead of us. Now, just to the left of this door, and I'm hoping that they don't dive in ahead of me, but just to the left of this door is another treasure coffer. Most people overlook this one, which is evidenced by the fact that they are actually running in without me. Now, the difference between this fight and the previous one is that there are two hands, not just the one. The first one, as usual, will grab the tank, more than likely, as the tank will be the one who actually pulls the enemy. The second hand will immediately grab somebody else, and that will usually be either me or the healer, depending on how fast I run into the battle. I think if no one else has hate, it's determined by proximity. Or maybe it's always determined by proximity, you know, I haven't actually experimented. But regardless, there's two hands. Kill the first hand, kill the second hand, people get out of the way of the lasers. Partway through the fight while you're killing the thing, another hand will spawn. So be sure to take that down, free the person from getting hit by yet another laser, and just go back to beating on the head. Near the end of the fight, another hand spawned, but at that point it wasn't entirely doing it the most work. So with the door open, we can move on then and find our way to the second boss. Cactars of all things. I'm sure everybody's excited for this. Now in this fight, the biggest thing to worry about is two things. One, there's a lot of ads that spawn. And the second thing is that the boss will occasionally ready an ability called 100,000 Needles. Obviously, if this goes off, you'll all die. However, 100,000 Needles can be stunned simply by doing damage to the boss. So, my suggestion is simply to DPS down as many adds as you can. If you see the boss readying 100,000 Needles, real quick run over and DPS the boss until it stops and go back to killing adds. When the adds are dead, wail on the boss. You'll see a large add spawn. Now this first time round, this isn't actually a big deal. The large add doesn't do a lot of note. At least that much different from the other ones, other than simply being a little more durable. However, you did see another 100,000 Needles in the mix of all of that. That's another ability the boss is using. I think it's called 30,000 Needles or something. But it's a ranged needle attack, and obviously if you get in, hit it, or stand inside of it, it'll hurt. Now, as you whittle down the adds, and as you whittle down the boss's HP, more predominantly, right around 25% of its HP, you'll see a very large add spawn. And this one will actually put a barrier around the boss, which you just saw there, and the boss will immediately start readying 100,000 Needles. This add needs to die to remove that barrier so you can go back and interrupt 100,000 Needles. That's the only time that you need to ignore 100,000 Needles and focus on an add. But once it's been interrupted, go back to killing the adds, then go back to killing the boss. Really, the biggest threat in this is simply missing 100,000 Needles, or potentially getting overwhelmed by the adds, but the adds do die fairly quickly. The only other thing of note is the ranged circular AoE, and just keep an eye open and keep on the move. Defeating it will drop 2 treasure coffers, which, similar to before, will hold either craftable items or items that you can turn in to get item level 90 gear, or potentially an item level 90 accessory. Actually, I think those only come in the optional chests. But regardless, moving on, just around the corner, you'll find 3 Tomb Raiders. These 3 Tomb Raiders are speaking about this large gemstone they just found, and we are greedy little jerks, so we're going to try to take it from them. Actually, though we attack them first here, they'll still attack first. They're enemies like any other, so technically you're defending yourself. And you kind of need that gem in order to save everybody else's life. Well, specifically one person. But I'm sure lives aren't a big a deal. The Tomb Raiders are all humanoid enemies and generally do humanoid things. There's not a lot specific to them. I think one of them is an archer and the other 2 are more melee-oriented. Various AoEs and such, nothing you haven't seen before. Now the last one drops another sphere, so you'll want to grab this one, as we will need it for later. We cross the zone line and make our way back to the original map, where there's now just a couple choice rooms before we make our way to where the final boss is. In this first room, you'll run across a couple temple mummies. Similar to before, I don't think these mummies do anything of terrible note, so handle them as you would handle them. With them defeated, we can move on to the next room, which has a couple of the Beladian knights, as well as another mummy. The knights you've seen before, and the mummies, again, don't do anything of special note that I've seen, so, as usual, take them down as I'm sure you know how to do. There we are, the doors open, and we're once again greeted by the, what time is it? 2 p.m.? Midday sun. There's a treasure coffer just across the way. As usual, it'll either have an item level 90 accessory in it, or a couple of crafting items. Well, I shouldn't say crafting items, elixirs and the like. This is another area where people will generally do a much larger pull. They'll grab the golem in the middle as well as the knights sprinkled about the area. All these enemies are enemies you've seen before. AoE them down and do what you can. The golem, being a rather large golem, has a large conal AoE in front of him, as well as a circular AoE around him. The circular AoE, if you don't feel like running away from it, can be stunned. But regardless, AoE them down, and pray that people are smarter than this group is. Well, at least we all didn't die that time. Once the knights are dead, the doors on either side will open up and allow you to make your way inside to where this magicked pedestal is, where you'll be placing the various stones that you've gathered over the course of the dungeon. The moon sphere goes in one side, the sun sphere goes in the other, and I believe it's the star sphere that goes in the middle, shooting a laser up to this door and opening it up, allowing you access to the boss. Thank you, camera. That's exactly where I wanted it. Not waiting this time. Now, this boss is not actually super complicated. For the most part, you just kind of need to wail on him. There's one overarching thing that you have to pay attention to as the fight goes on, but that's about it. You can see in the background there a couple coffins raised up. Throughout the fight, these tombs will raise up and mummies will take off running out of them. The mummies will disappear once they hit the opposite side of the arena, but if you happen to be in the way of any of these mummies, you'll get a stack of a debuff on you that immediately does nothing. However, if you get 4 of these stacks on you, you will turn into a mummy. Briefly, but it's grand, let me tell you. For at the very least the beginning of the fight, all you have to worry about doing is not getting hit by the mummies and DPSing the boss. And that's about it. The groups of tombs will come out in 2 different locations each time. They can sometimes be next to each other, giving the impression that it's one large group coming out. But it is always in 2 separate locations each time. And they will also always go horizontal. You can see them coming across this entire area here, so man, we're gonna have to move. Now, when the boss's weapons grow purple, as they are now, he's about to start swinging out a ranged charge that will clear a path across the arena. Once you see the purple glow, just do not stand in front of him at all. If you get hit by that, not only will it hurt, but it will also put a stack of that mummy debuff on you. As you can see, just happened to me there. So, again, once you see the purple, just stop standing in front of him. Other than that, the fight is much the same. Now, you see I get a red mark above my head. At the time, I didn't know how to approach this, but when you get a mark above your head like that, an arrow above your head, the boss is going to latch onto you. He'll tether himself to you. And, oh man, I'm a mummy. I'm a mummy! I'm a mummy. When he tethers onto you, though, that tether will increasingly add stacks of that mummy debuff until you're simply turned into a mummy. At the time, I didn't know how to approach this, but I've since learned that all you have to do is stun him, and that will interrupt it right off. Stun him fast enough, and you shouldn't get any stacks of the debuff on you. But, come the end of the fight, that's about it. That's all you really have to worry about. Stay out of the way of the mummies. When his weapons glow purple, don't stand in front of him. And if he ties that tether to you, stun him. other than that, just DPS them down, and you should win the day. Trying to get off that limit break. And thus ends Temple of Qarn hard mode. One final coffer at the end. The same rewards we've had in it up until now. And aside from the poetry and soldiery tomestone rewards, that is it for Temple of Qarn hard mode, and also it for all 3 of the dungeons newly added. Until next time, everyone.